Holdups are gone. Oh, you know what? I need to switch it over to screen just for a minute for the opening of this, but I will do that in a second. Everyone just hold tight if you are watching the VOD. I need to take the video link. I need to put it in the appropriate location, which is over in announcements. We go Trainz root building. I hope the new folks that did not know about this series, or even about my channel that came here just through the Iron Horseman Chronicles, will notice that. That came to the Discord server. Anyway, let me flip it over really quick so that everyone can, let's just put that at the top, I guess, right under webcam. So I can do that really quick, and I can say, this is your last call for trading cards. This is the last opportunity to buy. Pretty much there are 4 days to go. I think I might put the remainder of these up on Reddit. I might put a link out on Reddit that says, hey, we've got trading cards, because that's one place I haven't tapped yet. I just don't know where exactly to do it. And we actually were at 105%. We've dropped down to 102% because one of the 3 packs is now available. So you can always change your pledge if you got a 2 and you wanted 3. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, I digress from that. Buy trading cards. I'm probably going to mention that 2 or 3 more times during the stream. The link is down in the description. And we have some work to do, really significant work to do, actually. What do I think of Burger King's $1 burger? I have nothing positive whatsoever to say about Burger King in any capacity. That's all I have to say about that. It is time for the news section, and we do have to do a lot of theoretical stuff. Because the number one thing that we need to do is figure out the elevations of things. And I know we talked about, I should actually pull open the map, but I know we talked about this sort of being a high point, and then coming down a little bit and into Bellington and South Bellington, which I'm realizing South Bellington is going to be a little bit more industrial. North Bellington, or regular Bellington, is going to be a little bit more agrarian and blocked out. We may have some hills over here, some light hills, and we shouldn't expect to have hills in this area. Maybe over here, and then maybe again over here. Which I should probably mark the edges of where I think we're going to have hills with some sort of paint. So if I just use, I really don't want to use anything, yeah, this Gestine or whatever. So like, wow, you can't see that at all. Okay. What about this Gestine? Yeah, so like, I'm just marking this off, and you wouldn't really expect much here. Again, there's not really going to be too much in the way of hills. I wouldn't expect there to be too much that's going to get in the way of the actual right-of-way. So that's why they're just over here on the fringes of the map. And then we could have a section more over here where you have the edges of the hills come sort of down over here, and then the railroad will run along them, and then it sort of maybe just heads in this direction. You have this, it's not a ridge line, it's just sort of where the edge of the foothills are, but the railroad would be pretty well avoiding that. Yeah, that's kind of the issue. That's why we would be forcing it over there, but we'll have to see. Part of me is thinking fill in these tiles and just go for it with what needs to be here. Because the way these hills are made, it makes it look like there's going to be a lot more in this direction, when really there isn't. In fact, this castle, you might even say, is close to a high point. It's not on a high point, but it's close to one, and you would probably see a decline from here. But either way, this is going to be elevation centered on this area, and we can use terrain tracks to sort that out. We know that we're going to be increasing in height Going this way, again, we're going to be using terrain tracks to sort out the very base of where we're going. The thing that I want to think about is, if this is our high point, and if we're doing, let's say this is a couple of 100 feet up, we need to figure out what we're doing for ruling grades and how we can make that work. So we're going to bring back... Oh, we don't have it. Hold on. I need to go get it just for old time's sake. Lafayette, that's not your food. Stay away from the cat food. Download station. We have 4M standard solid, but we need 4M standard bump. Download. A track that can never be confused with track that we are meaning to use. There it is, 4M standard bump. Good old 4M standard bump. Okay, so the number one thing is going to be figuring out our ruling grade and what that would mean for where we're going. Now we're starting at whatever this height is right here, and I need to make sure I don't forget that, which this is about 30 feet above sea level. Not anything to write home about, but it's there. And if we consider a ruling grade of, say, 0.5, now this is where being able to make absurdly long splines comes in handy, but unfortunately you cannot go all... Oh, maybe we can. It said doo-doo. Okay, spline. We can only go so far with it. But this is where being able to make absurdly long splines comes in handy, because... And this is me experimenting as much as it sounds like me being confident. This is me experimenting. So that's straightened out. What we need to consider is, if we have a average grade, I won't say ruling grade, but an average grade of 0.2%, and we apply that gradient, at this end the height is 9 and change. 9 meters and change, because height is always in metric. And on this end, it is 28. That's actually not that impressive. So, I don't want most of this to be flat. I do want it to be an ascent over the course of these, well, a good portion of these 15 miles. That said, this stretch is a lot shorter than this, and although I would like the gradient to be steeper here, I actually think I want it to be down, up, down, flat. So you have a little rise you have to go over in between these two rivers. Probably we'll get a little cut in there. We're also going to need to do some research of prototypes and stuff like that. But that comes when we actually go to lay out the scenery. Right now we're just laying out really, really basic heights. So I'm thinking, this is a relatively long ascent, but the Gilson Eastern is known for doing relatively underpowered trains. And the other thing is, well, they are in the canon that I literally just made up when I said that out loud. The other thing is, it's not all going to be, it's not all going to be straight. It's not all going to be the same height. And we may have one or two smaller things in between there, although there isn't anything really in here, and there's no reason why it needs to be. I have Railroad Tycoon 3 on the brain, and I'm thinking, like, oh, where are we going to need to put water stops and stuff like that? But 15 miles is... Why do these keep coming back? Hold on. Didn't I get rid of these? Maybe I get rid of them and then I put them back. But I remember getting rid of them for good afterward. But they can go away. There we go. Now they're gone. So let's try something a little bit more hardcore. Let's try 0.4%. Because we can assume that if we call this halfway to the question mark town we don't have a name for, so that's a little bit better. That's 48. That's a couple 100 feet actually above sea level. That's about, what would you say? That's, well, it's about 150 feet above sea level. And if we go to here, right? If we go to here, and this is like, we'll call it 300 feet above sea level, and then we just have to get there, because there's the end of track. If we do another one of these for the second half, right? What was the answer to the $1 burger from Burger King? It's that I have nothing good to say about Burger King. I haven't eaten there in my entire adult life and in all of my adolescent life, and I cannot actually think of a time where I've ever eaten at Burger King. And I also have simultaneously never heard a single good thing about them. If you want people that review food, I would actually check out the Face Jam podcast. They're a lot of fun. They do a little bit of food reviewing and a lot of bit of messing around. It's Michael Jones and Eric Badur from Rooster Teeth and Jordan Swears, I think. Jordan something. But it's the three of them. They do a podcast. It's good. It's fun. Okay. So this is still not as high as I would like to get. But even still, it is a modest height. Now, going just a few miles inland and being at a couple 100 feet above sea level, if I just do a quick Google, right? This is not that many miles inland, but even if I pick something that's relatively hilly, I mean, we can look at, say, South County. If I... No, that's not the water's edge, this is. South County, Rhode Island, you go in... say 3 miles. What have you got there? You've got Kingston. What is the elevation of Kingston, Rhode Island? Kingston, Rhode Island elevation. 246 feet. Which, this is about that. It's a little less than that, honestly. But, and this is more than a few miles inland. Yeah, we could definitely do better than this. I think we could do better than this. We haven't even cracked 1%. I mean, I might stretch it out to an average of 0.5%, or maybe even an average of, like, 0.6, if we're really stretching it. But I don't expect these sections to be all that varied. Like, I expect them to be fairly straight. So, if we go with 0.5, then... we'll see where we get. See what we get. 0.5, and then we'll go to the middle point, which now we don't even know where that is. Because I didn't separate the two splines, which I probably should have. Yeah. And so the midpoint is at 58, so that's about 150. Or 160, 170. And then we continue, and there we go, 105. So that's about 300 feet above sea level. That I can live with, though I would want it to be higher. Meanwhile, we know that most of this area is, well, it's going to have this minimum of about 10 meters up, and from there, what are we going to do? Because this is venturing into the unknown in a way that I have not done before. Because this is all very gradual, broad strokes kind of work. Part of me wants to figure out where the track's going to go first, but I know that is not the way to do things, and that's not the way we do things here on Tolbrand. So, we need to mark out where the shoreline is, if we get any shoreline in this area, which we do. So, I actually do want to... I missed. I grabbed the grid instead. Mirror. Mirror. Oh, man. Excuse me. So, I do actually want to bring the shoreline in a little bit here, because it's right there, and if we bring it in a little bit, and then level it out, we have this sort of pinch point. Now the other thing is, we don't have any roads on this side, and we do need to sort of figure that out. We have this dirt road. Seagate, yeah. Hi, baby. We have this dirt road that leads up to the castle. We have a road that leads up high through Doe Cliff. Okay. But we don't have any roads on this side. And this is the 50s. I suppose I can excuse some of that. And if there's not really any development on this side of the river, and there wasn't really an easy way to get across it without a ferry, although, now that I'm thinking about it, having a ferry point probably would have been smart. And I could probably build one in somewhere. But they've got the bridge up there. I just don't know how much necessarily is going to be going this way, particularly from Mason's Landing. It's going to just come that way and go. And if it's coming from other points, it's going to use the highway that runs through here. So, yeah, I guess there are just not a lot of roads there. If it was on a big river, honestly, I wouldn't mind doing Seagate as a town name, because that is, if it was at the mouth of a big river, because that would be actually kind of fun. Yeah, so we'll bring the shoreline in a little bit here, and then we'll just do away with it so that we don't have to deal with it anymore. And either way, if we stick close to this, we're not going to need a couple of these tiles. So, bottom line is, if that's our shoreline, we can start with some relatively low amounts of grading, but it's just sort of a question of what do we do first. And how do we execute it? Because this hole needs to be flat, needs to be brought up to this level, but I don't want to go too far if we're going to be increasing in height fairly quickly, which I think in these opening areas, particularly through the pinch point here, we are. I think things are going to be going up at a relatively high rate, I mean maybe even 0.75% all the way through from here. I wanted to attach those two and I missed. All the way from here through here. Once again I missed. This is incredible. All the way to probably over here, and then it should get a little bit easier on the railroad builders because they can stop hugging the shoreline here. The other thing is, yeah, I mean, this is just the way the railroad comes in. I think leaving this as a forested peninsula of sorts is the right way to go. In fact, I think I want to draw this in like that instead of the alternative. So you have sort of a, like that, where you have this bulbous looking peninsula here that ducks back into a little cove. And now I'm just making a mess of things, so let me clean up my mess really quick. Because, I don't know, I think that might do it a little bit better just to show this as sort of like a delta or something. Anyway. Also, just as an aside, back to the trading cards really quick, because they just came up in my brain again. If anybody wants to share them in these, more heavily trafficked places, other discords, other, things like subreddits and stuff like that, be my guest. There's still 4 days left. We still have enough to print. There's another triple pack available, as I previously mentioned, now, because someone backed out. And that sort of, you know, again, that doesn't screw the pooch. We can still make the money. We can still produce the cards. In fact, I already printed the cards. But I just want people to know that that is available, in case they've bought a 2-pack and they want a 3-pack instead. So yeah, this will do a gradual curve this way. It will come up this way probably, and then to over here. Which, what is the height of this? Because this is going to be our new sort of line in the sand. That's about 30, which is good because that was our first guess at where this other thing is going to be. And I think we're going to kind of level out here a little bit. But I don't really want to be building track yet. I feel like that's something that we'll have to figure out. Did Discord break? I never get messages on Skype unless Discord breaks. Thanks, East. Thanks. I'm surprised he didn't put it in Terminus News. He put the link in the old chat. What's happening doing terrain first or this rough planning? No, you're absolutely right. We are doing terrain first. I am just trying to figure out how much things are elevating. That's why I'm using this 4M standard bump. As a way to start this thing. Now, now this elevation here is probably going to be the elevation of our mountainside here, and I do think I'm going to just sort of put a marker that this is the height that we want. The issue is, we need to find a way to make this gradient, make it subtle, and also make it varied without just mousing over it with the height up tool constantly. I think that's a good way to vary it up, but this is just Gilson Eastern. VMR is probably going to be in a couple of sections. So we have displacement maps, right? And some of these can be like cool and helpful, but they're only really good if you spread them out like crazy. So that's why I think this is going to be the kind of thing where, see, the other issue is, what is this? Displacement scale, yeah. The other issue is, when you select an area, and you paste this onto it, it doesn't overwrite, or sorry, it always overwrites. It doesn't do this, I don't think. Which I can just recheck that, because I think, yeah, hold on. Paste again, yeah, so first of all, that's a little nuts. Something seems to have gone wrong. How about I just do this? If I turn it all the way back down and then paste it over again, it should go away, right? Well, sort of. I mean, it didn't do nothing. But we need to figure out how to play with all these tools and make them do what we want. Now, this is not me coming in and saying I know all the answers. And that is, I wouldn't say it's rare for this series, but it's not where I am completely lost. It's not something that happens very often, but it does happen a lot when we're talking about terrain. Because in order to make good terrain, you really need to get used to using. Oh right, hold on. You really need to get used to using everything at your disposal, and this is one of those things. Um, there are a lot of options with how to make terrain, and hand drawing it is not always the way to go. Um, the thing is, we could draw these sort of like topo lines because we know that this is what we have to set up. The only possibly more obvious issue is that if we do draw them like topo lines, well, it runs us into some issues. We have 0 down here, but we can sort of get away with a flatter area that descends to 0. And stuff is just reappearing over here. Stuff is 100% reappearing, because I thought I got rid of this too. But we need to start basically drawing construction lines, honestly. We need to start drawing places where the terrain tracks need to go, which...
Did you know Norm Macdonald died?
Norm Macdonald?
Yeah.
When did he die?
September of last year.
Oh, maybe I did know that.
I just found out.
How'd you find out?
On TikTok.
Oh.
From the Oscars in memoriam slideshow.
Ah.
I didn't know he died. Maybe I did. Maybe I saw something wrong, but I don't know.
I don't know. Can't tell you. But yeah, we're doing terrain tracks again. What is this gradient from the sea to where we are now? Okay, come on. Give me it. Okay, it's 1.93. I mean, we don't need to mince. Give me an absolute value, how about? So, the thing is, if we know we have stuff at this height, and I draw what's effectively a topo line just this way, right? And I just call it a day. So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's actually do it at negative 0.01 with a terrain track, because that might be an easier way to regulate this. So, oh, and I forgot, if I hold shift it, no. If I hold control it continues it? Yes. So there's one thing you might not have known. Okay, now we have room for some valley shenanigans, I guess, in this area. Which, once we put this down, we can smooth these edges out with the Plateau Tool, probably. Yes, my love?
Can I put myself?
Of course. Give me the foot. Kick the dog. Don't kick the dog.
No.
Why do you need to take your brace off? You've never had a problem taking it off.
I want to hop in the shower.
And taking your brace off is going to be the thing preventing you from doing that.
Yeah.
Why do you make me work like this?
I'm sorry.
I love you, though. So, anyway. No, you're not. I love you. So, we'll pull this back. Now, you know, we'll have a weird topo line here. Why not? Yes, Lafayette is over here. And we're gonna fill in the middle. Oh, game. What? Oh, crap. Not what I wanted to do. Why is the track invisible now? Okay, so we have a topo line here, which we're gonna mess with. This is some really rough terrain. Think about when you build a model railroad, and when you, what's the word? When you have the like layers of foam before you cut them into the mountain shape.
You ran away from me.
Well, hi. I felt that cold, wet nose on the back of my head because now I have no hair back there. And now we're gonna sort of very sloppily fill this in because this again is not about precision, and Mother Nature is not very precise. So
I guess.
if we mix it up a little bit, then yeah, this is an old school method. This is probably doing the tiers and then carving them up is honestly reasonably, you might even call it a method that predates terrain tracks, because terrain tracks are something that, they are a hammer and everything looks like a nail, but this is just you're using exclusively terrain-based tools to get a terrain-based result. Or to get a terrain result. And we're going to fill this in because everything above this is probably going to be hand-drawn, hand-carved. Mountains that we're going to build ourselves. Everything above this doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to look good. And that's why, at the end of the day, we're doing terrain first, but for a section like this, it makes more sense to figure out what you figure your gradients will be in this portion, and then work to that end, versus the other way around, because I did learn when I was building the Gilson Eastern, and I got to Slop Ridge, that I had just piled too much dirt on a spot. What was that? And that doesn't always give you a good result. Just sort of winging it like that does not always, give you a satisfactory result. And I think, yeah, that is add height / objects. Hello, Skeletor. I was hoping that you would show up. Because we've had some new folks come in as well, I will do the reminder. We are at oh, am I? I'm not. Okay, good. I am just sharing the thing and not my screen. We are at 892 out of the 860 whatever that we need, or whatever it was. We're beating our projection. We're beating our goal on the Kickstarter for the Steam Locomotive Trading Cards, which, if you haven't ordered yours, you've got about 4 days left to do it. They are down in that is down in the description below. Now that we have a topo line that we like, hello TT Cheney. Now that we have a topo line that we like, we can start building terrain tracks off of it. And this, what is your problem? This is not the greatest method for doing anything. Again, people seem to like to use it as a one-size-fits-all sort of, oh good, we've fixed it. But that's not the way you want to do things. With terrain tracks, you want to use them as a precursor. You want to use them as a starter, as a way to, it's basically the same as this, except you can do slopes in ways that are not atrocious. And even after that, you still want to go over them with other methods. Because we have these tracks coming in here, and I wouldn't expect these to come down very much more. But this area, where we've already raised the ground up, I don't think is a candidate for using terrain tracks. For this area here, what we're going to want to do is use a Plateau Tool with a high radius and a relatively low sensitivity. It can be a little bit higher than that, though. Because what that will allow us to do is, after a few passes, or with a few passes, it will allow us to blend down the edges. Notice we're doing this, and as long as I click not up on this hill somewhere, the Plateau Tool is going to grab a height that is no higher than the highest height we have in this area. And that means that no matter what, I can't do something really atrocious with the way that I'm putting my terrain down. Can't screw that up. I'm wondering why you have a sudden craving for SPNS. Is there an explanation for that? Did you, like, read something? Because Tyler read the finished first draft of the Housatonic, which is complete. It may not be perfect. The pacing is a little bit eh. The characters aren't as well rounded and distinct as I would like them to be, and their arcs are not as defined or necessarily complete as I would like them to be. But they are there, and it exists. And I mean, if you've been to any coffee shop, you know where the coffee shop dock is. You can go in and read all of the Housatonic if you are so inclined. Otherwise, I'm going to be bringing in versions, or not versions, scenes to the next probably 6 coffee shops because I've got scenes for days now. Oh, that's cool. SPNS had SD70s. So that's a good question, Tyler. That is something that a lot of people have. Now, I haven't worked on the Iron Horseman route for a number of years. The people that have picked up the torch are mostly like Mason and Milky, and they did some work on it, but ultimately they have moved on from doing that as well. As I'm sure you have discovered, the route is a disaster piece. It's a wonderful thing. It was an amazing collaborative project. Wow, I had no idea it was around that late. It was an amazing collaborative project, and it allowed us to do some amazing things. But at the end of the day, it was a railroad that had lived its life and that existed for the sake of the Iron Horseman Chronicles. And when we sort of stopped producing that in any real capacity, beyond script writing, etc., the things that I've been doing on the side, the Iron Horseman Railroad sort of ceased to be a useful thing to put my time into. And that freed me up to pull out an idea that, when we've got to do this terrain as well, we'll work on the shoreline at some point later. That freed me up to do an idea that had been sitting in the back of my head. Leighton speaks for itself, yeah. For quite some time, which was this. This is the Tolbrin Peninsula. The name is taken shamelessly from Besiege, if you played that game. But the gist of it is I wanted to make a real scale route. I sort of realized that a lot of Trainz routes, particularly the Iron Horseman route, and it was admittedly one of my gripes with the Iron Horseman route that eventually led me down this path, most Trainz routes don't show off how big railroads are a lot of the time. I mean, in the modern era, with DEMS and with with many more ambitious projects, with people I feel doing a lot of these interesting projects that are sort of more like slice of a railroad projects. Yeah, I feel like maybe things have settled a little bit, but most of the time you see, I don't mean to say amateurish routes, but routes that aren't massive DEM routes, massive labors of love, things like that. Maybe I should just put it like this. I feel like when the average person sits down to make a Trainz route, the average Trainz user sits down to make a Trainz route, they end up prioritizing the railroad, which obviously makes sense, but to the point where you lose the scale at which a railroad tends to operate. You end up building a Trainz route that looks more like a model railroad, in that the distances between yards are almost as large as the yards themselves. Part of that is because wanting to build such an enormous route and wanting to spend all that time is something that people don't really want to do. But I realize that, with a weekly series like this, that I can do until the end of time, and probably certainly will, that's something that I can get away with. If I go for what was originally designed to be a relatively simple map, and just sort of have fun with it, and make sure that my number one priority is guaranteeing the distances between towns are realistic, to come back to it, then I can make something really special. I can make something really serious and extravagant and whatever. And there was a period of time where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do that, where I wasn't sure that Tolbrand was something that was viable, a reality that I could, something that I could create. I was in a slump. There was COVID. You'd think COVID would have let me do more, but really, there was too much going on at that point in time, too much going on in my life for me to sit back and work on a route like this. Notice how even on maximum sensitivity, it's not even that, it doesn't just drop stuff off. It used to be a lot worse, and it's changed throughout the route versions. I think I get what you're talking about. Like more of a model train route maker over. Yeah. Yeah, no. I almost called you Tristan, because there's a fellow named Trist that comes in from time to time. I'm sorry if I fudge names or whatever while I'm doing this. So, point is, absolutely, people tend to regard it as more, I'm going to come in here and build something that I want to operate. And that means I want to build something that is mostly ops and not so much anything else. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's no running, but it means that when they come in to build, what they want to build is the fun part of the railroad and not the tedious, boring, long part of the railroad. Add it to your list. Oh, please don't. Then you're going to just screw me up. I won't know if it's you or him. Yeah, it does go back to the roots of Trainz a little bit. Nowadays, we have much more fleshed out and interesting and, I guess, useful model railroad builders. Some of them are paid for. I mean, they're all paid for. I mean, this is paid for, too. But there are some track planners that won't let you go above a certain size without paying for them, and they have, like, a free demo. But there's also things like Rolling Line, which is equal parts. It's sort of trending more in the train simulator direction than it originally was, and perhaps than its original vision was. But that's neither here nor there. I think my point is that I don't mean to undermine my point by talking about Trainz as a model railroad builder, but people still don't come and sit down and build a massive route most of the time. And that's my bottom line. And so when it came to, well, I'm going to set the Iron Horseman route aside and I'm going to move on to my next big project. What is that going to be? Because we've had many things in the past. I mean, I started off with the Geiger Mountains. If you're new to the channel, then all these names are going to be foreign to you. But the Geiger Mountains was a relatively small, sort of suffered from the same problem, 3-foot gauge railroad that had, it was mostly the lumber cycle. It had the built-in, it had all the built-in industries like the, I keep wanting to call it the sawmill and the logging camp, like, but you know what I mean. The built-in Trainz industries, the logging camp, the lumber, hold on. This is going to drive me completely insane. It's called a forestry. It's called a forestry. How was that escaping me? I don't know. It's from you. It wasn't me. It was like that. Yeah, but it was like that this morning, so it's from the last time you took a shower. Anyway, this is called a forestry. This is called a lumber mill, I believe. I just placed down a forestry. This is called a lumber mill. This is called a pulp mill. So anyway, transferring 2006 and a video from this year. Yeah. So it was all default industries. It was relatively small. It was built like a plate of spaghetti. It was all just like loops and twists and turns. It was a very cool route from the point of view of like 12-year-old me that was working on it. No, no, no. It's the same thing, Ace. It is the exact same thing. Um, it's been a long time. The map has stayed about the same size, except we added this massive leg onto it. Just last episode. So this part's all done. This is actually on the DLS now. Um, but after the Geiger Mountains was lost, which is, I mean, Trainz just does that, you know? After the Geiger Mountains was lost, I moved on to my next big project, which was the Tamaros Vale and Anaconda Railway. And that was an exercise in making a giant route, like my first real attempt. Now, the distances between towns were still too short. The gradients were still too steep. The towns were still too small. It was, again, a railroad that was much more on the operations side than it was on the, well, railroad side. No, no, no. Here's the thing. Here's the great thing about Tolbrand. Because the Emeralds of Anaconda was a mess for many reasons. There are still downloads of it floating around. I'm sure somebody in the Iron Horseman Discord has a copy. And I think I might too. Even for a very long time, I had a copy of the original drawings that I'd used, because I had mapped it all out on paper beforehand. The Iron Horseman Railroad, when we put that together, we moved to digital, and I've been doing stuff digitally in terms of map making ever since. But obviously, you know, the Iron Horseman Railroad is a complete disaster when it comes to making the okay, so Braden does. It's a complete disaster when it comes to the assets, and I can talk about that more later if you want me to, because there's kind of a story there. And that's in making that and seeing that it was my third map with too much, well, railroad and not enough railroad, if you know what I mean. Too much of yard, yeah, too much yard and not enough railroad. Model railroad syndrome, we can just call it going forward. And I will use that in any potential future route reviews if I get back to doing that. I'd like to hear that story. Remind me if it gets away from me, because you know me, I will go off on 70 different tangents. By the way, link to the trading cards in the description. Speaking of tangents. But, man. When I drew up the original plan for Tolbrand, and I'm really resisting pulling open the map right now and showing you all, because most people here have seen it before, but I love it when a new person comes into the channel and I get to talk them through the whole thing. And this is also where my terrible social skills not only come from, but also shine, because I'm talking to a brick wall. I never have to worry about somebody saying something, and I don't have to worry about cutting anyone off. So when I talk in real life, it becomes a mess, because I have no way to, I have no safety valve on that. I just always want to open my goddamn mouth. It's the worst thing ever. Thank God I'm the host of Locomotive Royale, or I'd be kicked off that show. Anyway, I sat down and I planned a route with only the most basic industries, not unlike Geiger Mountains, but with enormous distances between the main cities. And we're talking dozens of miles at a minimum. The main line of our Star Railroad here, these are too far apart, god damn it. The main line of our Star Railroad here, the Gilson Eastern, stretches 200 miles on the peninsula, which is the main body of the route. Oh, and you know why it doesn't fit? It's because it's, because we're using 5-meter grid, so the tracks need to be even more closely spaced. Which I think I might just make a section of terrain tracks and copy and paste it and see how that works. Again, we need to use all the tools at our disposal. And copy and paste is one of them. So, I didn't goof up the map with scaling, but there was never really any rational scaling to be had. Maybe I termed it that way, maybe I thought of it that way. back when I made the TV and ARR. But looking back, I don't recall ever doing a proper scale. I don't think I even knew how large a tile was at that point. Um, oh, you know what? You know what did me in, actually? No, Braden, you are partially right, actually. What did me in was the fact that I underestimated my distances and overestimated my heights. I had ahead of time blocked out how high I wanted every town to be, and then I was sort of locked in after building my first segment. I was locked into a map that was way too small. Not something, not a situation you really want to be in. So, yes, you could say I goofed up the scaling. I just was too ambitious with the height changes, and that's why I was so nervous. That's part of the reason I was so nervous going into this today. Uh, because I don't want to call out a height that's too high and then be stuck with it. And I think that there may be opportunities to go even higher than we are going. The thing is, out of South Bellington... Oh, whoops, that's over here. Out of South Bellington, we're going to have two railroads. We're going to have one that's going this way, which is called what is it called? The Mansfield Branch Railroad. Taken for the railroad that existed where the fictional Iron Horseman would have been. Or the Mansfield branch of, I think, the Great Northern. It's in Waterville, Washington. If you can look that up on a map, it's the middle of nowhere. I think it's Waterville. There's also Douglas, Washington out there. Douglas on the Iron Horseman is a real place in Washington. And that's what had us locate it. But I'll move on from that. Because the Iron Horseman was not planned with a real life location in mind. I just have an affinity to put water on the left, and I don't know why. And that's what happened when I was drawing the map. That's what happened when I was drawing this map. So, South Bellington here, I've got to have a line going that way and a line going that way. That one's going up. This one's going up-ish, and this one's going like flat or down, if I'm remembering right. Maybe up a little bit and then down. We'll see. Yeah, so yeah, it is in Washington. When Cole comes over in the barge, he's coming over from a locomotive repair facility in Vancouver. So, that may answer some questions. Damn it, I need water. And Glory's in the shower, and I don't want to get up. So, we're going to suffer through this. We'll still get lost on the way to Douglas. No matter what, yeah. There's a lot going on there. Again, I can talk about that a little bit later, but... So, yeah, Tolbrand was born out of a desire to have a realistic-sized route. And that is a difficulty. It's not actually... It's not simple. It's not easy. It's not normal. It's not what normal people tend to do with trains. Or at least the average user, I would say. And it spiraled out of control very quickly. So the thing is, when you go and build a route like this, you spend a lot of time doing very little. And, yeah, and see, we're going to need to smooth these out anyway, so I don't know how valid my strategy is, but here we go. The route then became something completely other when I realized the sheer scope of what I was doing. And there's another factor here. So, hi Brian. So, just to go back and lay a little bit more groundwork for what I am about to say. Geiger Mountains was a completely automated route. Every train did its job automatically, and they were on a loop, so they would always be doing that thing. There was a passenger train that went around the edge of the map. There was and hit all the towns on the outskirts. There was a train that ran through the middle of the map and hit all the little towns. And little towns, they had no buildings really. They were just an industry and some yards. We do have 12 people, which is why I'm trying to nail down the link to the trading Steam Locomotive trading cards in the description. Feel free to buy some. Feel free to share them. Tell your friends. Anyway, that route was completely automated, and I've been chasing that high ever since. And when I realized I'm going to build a route that is not dissimilar in terms of ambitiousness, because for me in that at that age that was very ambitious. Uh, I sort of realized that, well, okay, there are two stated goals for this railroad then. Number one is build a realistic scale route. This is the town of Olive. Olive is broken. What happened?
Hi, can I help you?
Oh, it's trees. Oh, it's trees. It's trees. It's trees. It's a missing tree. But I don't understand why I would have a missing tree because I replaced all these trees. Um, well, at least it's showing them. I think I'm just gonna get rid of them because, yeah, that's the other thing I need to do. I need to delete missing assets. Oh, except this one because this path went around a tree. Um, so we need to throw in a tree here. We'll just go with a sugar maple. No, it's too big. There we go. That's more like it. Uh, it's good to know that these trees are actually showing up as not here, and maybe we can go back and fix that later. Actually, well, there's no real easy way to fix it. Anyway, but this is Olive, is my point. Also, Shortline made a good point, which is that he made it all the way up here. He said something about how there are sections of the route. Yeah, there are things on the route that you can't see from the track but are still there. Yeah, the route is a part of a larger world. B, that world is gigantic, and C, that world is realistic. Yes, my love.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Ah, Lafayette.
Even got missing assets. We'll get to that. I can explain that. Um, this is Olive. As you can see, Olive is mostly suburbia, and even then, it's not as much as you probably need for a town of this size. But you have some developments getting built, you have commercial stores, you have a hotel, and then you have blocks and blocks and blocks of just houses. And why did I do this? It isn't because I hate myself, it's because I needed to show at least a realistic fraction of the population of a town that could support this much industry and this much rail yard. Um, Even still, like I said, there should be 3 or 4 times as much residential. There's a little bit more over here, and there's a little bit more like out here for the mills and stuff, but not much. What has he got? What happened? Oh, the dog keeps eating the cat toys. So, oh my god. Nah. I don't really know what to do with it, but I wouldn't throw it away. Um, so it was to make a realistic world. Make a realistic no, I do. That just isn't why I built the town, Tyler. Uh Realistic distances. 15 rail miles, actually 14.99 between this right here. This is Olive Station, the Gilson Eastern Railroad's Olive Station. You can see they've got position lights because they are based. And crossing boards because I guess the walkway's overrated. Um, they also have this cool entrance from the street below because, why not? Um, 15 rail miles from there to the next station, which I would just skirt along the whole thing, but I am already taking too much time out of this, which this is the station of Mason's Landing, which has one through track and one non-through track. Again, a big walkway over the tracks, but, you know, I digress. 14.99 miles if you start at one and end at the other. And there is nothing in between. There are a few signal bridges, there are a few creameries, which you can pick up milk at. There's one little industrial area down here, which is Locke's Quarry. And a beach town, which is over here, which you can't really see from the tracks and has no association with them. You just, when you go, no, see, these didn't copy. We replaced this. Are they all like this? No, come on. I physically went through and replaced these things. Why is nothing saving? What is going on? We need to solve this problem before we go any further. Because I don't know what else we might have lost if the trees aren't saving. Are the blue push pins back? Because that's something we definitely did last time. I know we did this signal bridge. Maybe I just missed a couple, but no. Yeah, wait a minute. Because this should be the other signal bridge. This should not be. Because look at where the spline points are. This should not be. And I can't even click on it. Wait a minute. No. PRR. No. Hold on. Oh, I need in here. Show search filter. We spent the last 3 episodes. I will say this just to clear up why I'm so peeved over this in particular, and why there are missing assets on this route. When stated goals of Tollbrand: 1, make a realistic sized world with realistic stuff in it, as close as damn possible. 2, fully automate it. That is the crazy one, I know. 3, make it multiplayer compatible. And this is old school multiplayer, not the MPS stuff with the limited resources. This is, as long as the asset is on the DLS, you can use it. And so all of this stuff, barring a couple of assets which were thrown in by accident or were included in payware routes that I didn't know I had, is on the download station. And those 80 or so assets that are included in payware routes that I didn't know I had couldn't make the trip into 2022, and we spent 3 episodes fixing them in Tane. Now, my gripe, my question, the thing that's making me lose my mind here, is we fixed them. We exported the CDP, and then we put it into this. And I think they're still fixed in Tane, which I will go and check. Just to make sure that that's not the issue, that it's something with 2022, and I may want to throw this out in a CDP and then bring it back in and see what happens. Ah, see? Like, now it shows up as a missing asset. And it said I had faulty assets also. Signal. No, see, all we have is this. Which, that shouldn't be a thing that's happening. We're gonna switch out of Trainz mode for a second so we can troubleshoot. Bam, there's the tunnel. Let me fix my camera because I started to slouch. There should be, in the download station, oops, signal bridge. And it's a PRR type. And it is a spline. It is similar to the... Oh god, don't look at the Tamros yard, please no. I don't need reminders. Open for edit, huh? 'Cause this, that's the problem. There's stuff that's open for edit that needs to be closed. The trees are one thing. I don't know why those are still showing up. But this is fixed. It is the right asset. The asset is just open for edit, so it's not showing. And I thought I saw the one over here was fine. But no, I'm losing my mind because the signals are right here and they're floating. What else is open for edit? Hold on. Filter, open for edit. Literally just this. Maybe this is the only one. What happens if I revert to original? PR. No. But I have it. What's wrong? Oh, and it's gone now. Can I go into today? Nope, that's 4M standard bump. All content. Signal bridge. And now it's gone. Where did it go? List asset versions. Look, there it is. I think. Yeah, there it is. Why is it gone? Why is the rum gone? Revert if unchanged. Moment of truth. Moment of truth. It's still not here. Son of a gun. This is it. This is that signal bridge. I swear it is 100%. And I don't want to replace them all because they're all elevated the right way. I am going to back out of the route and then come back in. How about we do that? You did TVAR Mercado? Why?
What happened? Did it crash?
No, I'm just losing my mind at weird things. This game's...
Can you tie me?
Can I tie you? Oh yeah, sure. Hold on. Let me do this while we go back to the route. Don't have to reload the route. That's what I'm trying to do. That's a good point. Hopefully it'll work fine. Lafayette, I can feel you between my legs. I can feel your tail wagging. Is that tight enough?
Yes.
Okay. Oh crap. It started the session and not the route. Alright, well, enjoy the trolley for a minute while I take care of this. Alright, I can't do this sitting down.
Okay.
I am trying my hardest.
I appreciate you trying your hardest. I love you. Wait, what one for you gonna do?
Railroads. Did you vote?
No.
Shit. That's... I mean, don't feel bad. This time it was a landslide. There you go. Can you get me some more water, please?
Yes, you can do my cup. I was gonna suggest tabletop, so I can play with you guys.
Someone...
I haven't been able to play the last time.
There were a couple of TTS options that were on the board, too. You want to play Life? Okay. Oh yeah, boys, it's trolley time. I did it somewhere back on my channel. There's a 24-hour stream of the trolleys. All right, it's showing as missing assets instead of faulty assets. Hopefully, this will do fine. Here's one other thing that. Hold on, let me just make sure that I'm not totally losing my mind here. If there's a pile of junk here, I swear to God. Okay, I think it's gone. I think the junk is gone. We finally got rid of it. Oh, and while I'm here, obviously, you need to check on this. But there's something else. Okay, now what? What is wrong? What could be wrong? This is that. It's 100% this. Unless it's the previous version. Let's do routes and sessions just real quick. Go to Tollbrand 033 default. List dependencies recursively. I know we have a lot of missing assets there, but we should have the signal bridge. We don't. Did I lose those changes? Did something crash? And then we lost those changes? Or is it... Thank you. Oh, it's right here. 100%, this is what that is, and it's not showing up. I wish I could just grab it so that I could replace it. Oh, that's the wrong button. What am I doing? Can I grab a... Hold on. Bulk asset update, replace. Asset to update. Missing spline. Will this replace all of the missing splines? Bridges, tunnels, and double track are not supported. This is a... Oh, I guess it does say bridge. Just do it anyway. Okay. 100%. This is just the... I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Also, is that a missing texture? Oh wait, because it was under a building. That's why. This building is fixed. So it's not like it's not like all the changes didn't take. There's one in particular that I wanted to see, which was this guy on the corner. Yeah, so the milk tanks are here still. I'm not talking about the Pokemon, talking about these tanks. Oh yeah, we're missing another tree over here. This was, I think, a river birch. Well, we have to go and fix those signal bridges, I guess. I don't want to, but we do have to. Thankfully, there aren't too many of them. I think what we'll just do is we'll just place over them like this. Hi, Pat. There we go. There we go. And then we will delete. Well, actually, let's just, as we go, delete. If we can. Nope. 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 Alright. We'll delete missing assets when everything's fixed. I think the only things we have to fix are... Hold on, let me check out on... Now I'm getting caught on tangents fixing stuff. Yeah, we have a missing house here again. I replaced this with another house, and then that house went missing as well. So, I don't know what you expect me to do. And I can't delete it! That's the other issue. Of course. Why would I be able to delete it? Bungalow... Wait. Sears bungalow. Yes, sure. Cream. Cream colored. That is the one I thought I replaced it with, but I guess not. Okay. We gotta fix the rest of the things, and then we'll get back to the heavy lifting with the terrain. I know we've only got an hour left or so in the stream, but alas. Alas, poor Yorick. Alright, so these signals are up here. Yeah, there we go. Right there. Right there. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I'm just assuming that I was infallible in the past. Alright. And other side. There we go. Lift it up to the right height. No, I turned this on. This was an intentional thing. Wait a minute. What the hell happened here? Oh, so it saved the first one, but not the others? What, the cinnamon toast? Anyway. This is, I think, the first one that I did. The first one that I fixed, and that's why. I must have just lost some progress there, maybe. Maybe. No, because that doesn't make any sense either. No, I'm losing it. I'm going off the deep end, guys. I'll see you at the bottom. Oh, that's cool. So yeah, 3 stated goals for the map that we're on now. Number 1 is to make a realistic world. This one's fine. And that is, I would say, being accomplished. Number 2, Lori didn't shut this door. Oh, it's getting cold in here. Number 2 is to automate the whole goddamn thing, which is the insane part of it. Because it's not limiting, it's just nuts. It's not, it's not like an issue you have to work around. It is literally you're challenging the game to a battle of wits and expecting to survive, expecting to keep yours at the end of it, which will never happen. I've already lost my mind with the AI repeatedly because they just don't make any gosh darn sense. And that is a completely different angle on this thing. The other aspect to consider when you're realizing that I'm making a series out of this is that I am trying my damnedest to cover all of my bases. I'm trying my damnedest to make a series where you can come to it and pick out, the episode that you need and learn whatever it is you need to know about route building. One of the things that would be nice to do, I always do Q&A, obviously. We haven't had a lot of Q lately, but I usually have a notes document where I keep track of the questions so I can answer them later. Whether that being just in the course of me building this route, or I'll detour onto a test world and show, give a little red-green-esque tutorial. So, yeah, these are all fine. Don't know why these are fine. I'm not really complaining, I just don't know why. Yeah, and we need to replace some trees over here. Originally they didn't show up, and I asked them to show up so I would know if anything was missing. Because if stuff starts jumping out at me as missing, well, that's a bigger problem, obviously. And speaking of things jumping out at me as missing, I'm going to make sure that the... Okay, good. The switch levers are all there. That is... I'm thankful for that, because that was a big problem. This thing's not animated, is it? I'm okay with that. Doesn't need to be. The magic of Trainz. The magic of paints. Currently, the only thing automated right now, as you saw, is the trolleys. They wake up at 5 in the morning, give or take, and they do loops around their entire system until about 1 in the morning. So yes, they do run for 19 hours, or 20 hours, 19, 20 hours. And then they go back in their barn, and they get ready for the next day. They are programmed on a loop, so they will do that until the end of time if you let them. We did a 24-hour run session to make sure that the concept was sound, and that it would in fact work, because in addition to wanting to automate every industry imaginable, the other important asterisk thing that we are doing, that I am doing, is automating things such that at the end of the day, everything's... God damn it. Everything starts anew. And that does sound normal for a trolley system, it's just not normal for a Trainz game to run for 20 hours. But the idea of Tolbrand, in a nutshell, for you as the player, is that you are able to jump into this world, and you can have AI on, or you can have AI off. And if you have it off, you have an entire world of trains ready to run. And if you have it on, you are part of a functioning world that is running. That's the gist of it. That's what. And now I need to change these all to the route layer because I'm dumb. Trainz. Okay, thank you. Maybe that's part of what happened. Maybe some of them were in the session layer or something. But that wouldn't explain the ones that were half size. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could break it down even further into the world, which is to make a realistic world with realistic proportions and realistic sizes, and distances, and towns, etc. All of that you can lump together under that header. And the next one is to make where is my map settings? Map options. Show signals, please. There we go. There's a signal bridge in the swamp. Okay, these are all route layer, I'm pretty sure. There's a philosophy to doing that. Getting flashbacks to Microsoft Train Simulator. After 10 hours, another train derailed, ending my session. Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in trains, it shouldn't do that, although I may set cleanup to none, because it just, you wouldn't want... You would want to know if a train was derailed, if a train disappeared. You'd want... If a train popped off and thus broke the schedules of everything, you'd really want to know. Because, a railroad... On a railroad, all the schedules are linked. Everything runs together, like an enormous clock. But that is, that is something to keep in mind. And I think one of the other things I'm going to do is make sure all this is minimum this height. Which I will smooth out the edges afterward. But bottom line is I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure this is not a valley. Because if this is a valley, that presents problems because where is the water going to go? This is a constant gripe of mine when it comes to route building. There are two things, which is where is the X going to go. One is where is the water going to go, and that's of course when you're building terrain. Water all needs to be able to flow somewhere unless you happen to be building a desert route where water is no concern. But even then, it rains in the desert sometimes. Nowhere is free of the wrath of the effects of water. Nowhere on Earth, anyway. Maybe if you're building a Mars route, but even then! Point being, everything's got to go somewhere. Water's... all drains lead to the ocean. And all rivers lead to the ocean, more or less. And, at the very least, all water flows downhill. So, with that in mind... You need to be conscious of the fact that when you're building terrain, you can't leave giant divots everywhere and expect things to be all copacetic. Obviously, Trainz doesn't do any sort of water simulation, so realistically, Trainz will not care if you make a big bowl. But, yeah, railway on the sun. There's still hydrogen and oxygen. I didn't necessarily say the Mars thing as a joke. Apparently there's a lot more Mars content for this game than I thought. Anyway. Welcome back. Anyway, I am a stickler for getting topography right. I'm a stickler for getting, sort of heating geology, making geography that makes sense, making sure that your watersheds make sense. That sort of thing. That is, honestly, I care a lot about that, probably way too much. And we're going to build up this side anyway, so having this area be flat right now probably isn't a big deal. We're going to come through it again later. Taking routes to make a most infuriating route for Alice. Yeah, okay. So, yeah. I'm a stickler for that. I'm a stickler for making sure your route is ready for AI operations, etc., etc. There are criteria by which I judge a route, because I used to do route reviews, and those things sort of govern my idea of how to make a good route. Hi, Lafayette. And, again, I believe they reflect fairly substantially on route builders that are striving for fully realistic routes and that want to hit all their bases and have a well-rounded, fully built route. Now, there's no saying that you have to do that. I am not here to tell people what is the right and wrong. Despite doing route reviews, I'm not here to tell people what is the right and wrong for them. At the end of the day, Trainz is a primarily single-player game, and I don't think you should necessarily poo-poo someone for having a wacky route. It's just, if someone is trying to create a realistic route, that is where things come down to the question marks. that is where these things can be brought into question, can be called into question. And other than that, I mean, you do what you want. You know, someone's putting a route out there like, hey, tell me how I did. I'm going to judge it based on what I think goes into a good route. Uh, Now, whether that is something everyone agrees upon, or if it's something that I nitpick, or something that I care about a lot, uh, you know, that's where the difference lies. You know, maybe you want more than one person to look your route over, but those are the things that I'm focusing on when I'm working on this route, and those are the things that are going to come up in discussion a lot when I talk about why I'm doing certain things. Now we're back to the basics on this. We're far from in the weeds. I am working on portions of the route which are completely virgin, that have not been touched before, that I just put the baseboards down and then I covered them with grid to make sure I could see. And that means my priorities are going to be a little bit different than they've been for the last, well, couple years. We've been working on the previous section for a substantial amount of time, and that has not changed my perception, but it's been under a different set of priorities, because the terrain was mostly done and has been done for, again, a substantial amount of time. So one of my first principles when it comes to terraining is to do the terrain first. This is something I learned the hard way off of the Tamros Vale and Anaconda Railway. Not necessarily related to my big elevation blunder, but definitely related to the terrain that surrounded said blunder and blunders, because it was more than just one. It was about every town. I was too ambitious. I didn't learn from that, because when we did the Iron Horseman route, there was also too much elevation change in too short of a distance, but that's beside the point. I think if I were to build a Iron Horseman route using a DEM, which I tossed around the idea of for quite some time, then the elevation changes and gradients would probably be much harsher than the ones on the existing route, and even the ones on the existing route are fairly harsh. I'm sure those of you that use or have used the Iron Horseman route understand what I'm talking about. So, again, one of my first principles is doing the terrain first. Why? It's not because I'm a masochist, like I said. I don't do these things because I hate myself. I do hate myself, but that's beside the point. I do these things because I think it results in a better and more realistic route. And I can give an example of this in just a moment once we finish smoothing this part out, because this is how we're going to go through it. We're going to go through it kind of slow. Like we're still within sight. We are a fraction of the way down to the end, but getting the terrain right in this section is going to be, well, it's going to be a real trip. And so, in short, what do I mean by doing the terrain first? Why does it help? I mean, obviously, what I mean is this, but why does it help? Well, because then you're forced to do real engineering, and maybe some folks can sit down and they can figure out where they want cuts, where they want embankments, to have a normal ratio, a realistic ratio of cuts to embankments, to tunnels, to bridges, that sort of thing. Maybe some people can do that. I don't, and while I wouldn't consider myself a foremost authority on the thing, I feel like my background lends me to that sort of thing, and particularly my own experiences within that background of being a civil engineer. So, in doing the terrain first, you were then forced to sit down and figure out, well, okay, I've built land that I think is realistic, which even still, this is not the most. It's a little bit bumpy, it's a little bit too sloped towards the sea. Honestly, there should be some bluffs or something to, sort of hammer home the point that, yeah, these are, this is going towards the sea. There are some, there is a subtle elevation change down, but it doesn't it's not subtle all the way down. You know what I mean? It's subtle for some of it, and there are some beach-esque and bluffs-esque formations, which I'm going to do right now. Which, in reality, I think these would be even steeper and taller. But, you know, we're going to be putting farm fields over this. Not that that really changes any of what I just said, but farm fields can go over hillier stuff than you might expect. And down here on the ocean side, I don't know. I think the point is just to get terrain that doesn't look bad. And that was a lot of meandering phrases that didn't really amount to much, but such is life sometimes. You're not going to win on the debate team doing that, but you might bewilder some people. Either way, I want to show an example for those that are still with me. Oh, you know what? I haven't switched this back yet, huh? Sorry about that. For those that are still here, I want to show the example of why doing terrain in advance is good and why it's bad. This is an example of why it's bad. Oh, and I need to do some... Hold on. Wait, I know that I came through here. I know 100% that I came through here with dirt and stuff, and I don't know what happened to it. Thought I did anyway. Maybe I lost that too. So much stuff is wonky. But this area is a giant S-curve in a cut. Oh! Oh, I get it, I think. This area was probably a different texture, and I swapped it out. It might have been one of the Donner Pass textures. Which, we can find something to replace that and just fill it in really quick. Or it is just a missing texture that did not save at all. Yeah, we can't use... I don't think we can use the Donner stuff at all. Because these are PBR Donner things. They're probably packaged. And... yeah, so Rock Cliff. These are the kind of things that I can use. Anything with a white one that I can use. And this area is... yeah, that looks really good. This area is almost all in a cut, past the farm here. Now that's not good, you don't really want that. It can happen, but it's the kind of thing railroads would tend to avoid. So you can do the terrain first and just throw down too much ground and have to overcome it. And, oh, Tardis Pass? Oh god. Actually, it wasn't that bad if I remember right, it was like 2 and change. Tardis Pass was the pass between, Temeros and Arturo, if I remember right. I don't remember it being that bad, but it definitely wasn't good. But this area, yeah, like I said, it's all cut. It's not great. It's not ideal. It's not necessarily realistic. It's not necessarily unrealistic, but it is a long way to build a cut. Too costly to do that instead of going around. Yeah, exactly. You'd only do this if you had no choice. And the thing is, with this stretch of the railroad, this was them building a cutoff. This was them saying, okay, we're pouring money into something. Because originally the railroad went out this way, and actually went like all the way around and in that direction, like over there. So it peeled off and went around like that. Then they built this, which I believe I've called the Doe Cliff Cutoff, and it comes straight through here and across the Poughkeepsie Bridge, across the valley floor, after going through this massive cut. Tardis 2.5, that sounds about right. Actually, in honor of that, maybe we should have something Doctor Who related as the missing or as the town. Also, I forgot to spin my texture here. If you hold the brackets, the textures spin, which can be helpful. Doesn't always work, but better than nothing a lot of the time. So we have this railroad that snakes through the cutting here, comes out to Elvira Valley Grain, or just Elvira Valley Farms, and then ducks into a tunnel. Now, how did I know I needed a tunnel here? I didn't. I just built a big hill and went, oh crap, the only way that I'm... Oh, hey, Tyrese. I am doing all right. I was losing my mind a minute ago, but right now I'm doing okay. Again, how did I know I needed a tunnel here? Because I built a hill and needed to get through it. And now this is where the fun begins. I was building up for all of this, so that's notable. Also, I can switch to Surveyor 2.0 to hide the spline points. I don't know how to use Surveyor 2.0, but it'll look a little better for the time being. This is where this is one of those things where I built all this terrain ahead of time. I built all this area, which is very hilly. I wish I could hide the trees for a minute, but it's very hilly. It's got two rivers that converge down here, and I was trying to build up it with the railroad at about, I think, 1.5%. So I built this bridge here to cross over to the other side because it seemed like it made more sense than to try to go straight through this, and then, you know, snake around this because there's like a depression here. This was me troubleshooting on the fly. I went, okay, well, I guess I gotta cross the river, and then I have a section that's on an embankment, and then a section in a cut, and then a section where it's relatively flat, so I put a section house here. And then another cut, and we're gonna hug this side a little bit, which in reality they probably would have bumped it over so it was more fill than cut, but it near enough makes no difference. And then we have these tracks merge into one so they can gain enough elevation to get into Lionhead, which is here. You know, I knew this elevation was here. I knew we needed to get up over where this waterfall is, because this is actually a fairly steep descent. You'll notice that, you know, it goes underneath the tracks here. And so I built a 1% grade just to see if I could. I immediately crossed the river so that I could use this spur of the river, came up on this side, and it's dicking in through cuts and fills and cuts and fills and cuts and fills. Sharp turn in a cut over a stone bridge, which is also curved. You'll recognize this from, you'll recognize this technique from Lee's line, the old main on the Iron Horseman. But the terrain there was substantially worse. And then cut and fill, fill, cut. And then it basically levels out, although it is on a fill for a lot of this. Turns this corner and goes onto this big trestle here to get across to where Lionhead is. I probably could have wrapped this around further, built a smaller trestle, and then built another bridge. But this is what made the most sense to me intuitively coming up through here. And then I went, well, maybe if I stuck on this side of the river, I could do it with a steeper grade. And believe it or not, that route I just showed you is 1%. This route is 2%, almost exactly. And it just runs down here, and it goes over this brand new trestle, as you can see, by the cribbing that's still installed underneath it, and goes on a man-made embankment, or, you know, a stonework embankment instead of a dirt embankment, and then merges back in with the other line here with a little bit of earth and fill to keep it from being hover track. So that's how the terrain can affect your railroad right-of-way. I didn't plan this right-of-way in advance. I didn't figure out where there were going to be cuts and fills in advance. I just built a river valley and tried to build up it. Some people call me crazy. because you're basically making more work for yourself. But I think in the end it gives you a substantially more realistic uh, output because you have to do actual engineering. None of it is pre-planned, and it does get weird sometimes. I mean, there's this section here where you come across basically a riverbed where there are no trees because it floods often, on a high embankment, on a sharp turn, just to run into a cut, just to do a crazy S-curve to get up here. But the reason that this is like this isn't just because I really liked these trees and didn't want to cut them down. It's because this was the only way to reasonably get enough altitude to get through this area without it being even more ridiculous. This is Jefferson's Cut. This is one of the deepest cuts on the VMR so far. And when I made it, it was by far the deepest cut. So that's the sort of thing. You have people talking about emergent gameplay. You could almost call this emergent infrastructure, where you are building like a tycoon game. Anyway, and if Railroads Online has done such a good job of combining a simulator and a tycoon game / railroad builder, I think there needs to be something that's... I mean, honestly, what can I really complain about aside from the lack of boiler explosions? Not really much. It has done a great job of combining something like Derail Valley and something like Transport Fever. The only thing that's missing is, like, AI to run your trains and stuff like that, and signals, of course, and boiler explosions. So, yeah. I'm gonna grab this chunk of land, I think. No, because that's not gonna work because it's not grid aligned. So that's where we come into more trouble. If I can just fill the rest of this in by the end of the episode, that would be a victory for me. So I'm going to start going with terrain tracks, and we'll see where we go. We need to go back to Surveyor 1.0, though. No, wrong button. Yeah, no, please don't do anything. Please don't do anything. Edit in Surveyor Classic. I did not mean to do that. Yeah. And now it's dark. File, save. I don't know what to do at that point. I started the session, hopefully it doesn't break anything. We need to change it back to high noon. That's nighttime. That's midnight. There we go, noon. And hopefully that didn't change anything else. I appreciate people still repping 2006. What a great game that was. So, now for the elephant in the room that I need to get back to. Why is the Iron Horseman Railroad such a disaster when it comes to assets? Some of you already know at least half the answer to this question, which is that it was a collaborative piece. When we planned the Iron Horseman Railroad, it was a collaboration between a substantial number of people, at least 6 or more people, not including the folks that we got on just to do a voice or two. But yeah, as for the major proponents of the Iron Horseman Chronicles, we're talking at least a half a dozen people. And started off as a, well, we want to like do a full Buccaneers continuation or something. And so we started off with a jokey working title of The Empty Buccaneers. And it went from there. We started developing, and eventually decided, well, okay, we're not going to do the full Buccaneers. We're going to be doing our own thing in the spirit of the full Buccaneers. So what do we do with that? Well, okay, well, we need to develop some characters. We need to develop a setting. We need to develop some lore, but mainly let's just focus on the characters and like episode ideas and like just like basic plot beats. We never planned out a series arc until the second season, and unfortunately, we never even got to finish the second season. But such is life. Point is, we were amateur folks doing amateur things, and the big set piece, of course, was going to be our set. So we came up with a railroad. We called it the Iron Horseman Railroad because, as is said in the very first episode, they couldn't settle on a real name. We couldn't settle on a real name, and we knew we were never going to. And with all the locations being fictional, and with the fact that our group was already called the Iron Horseman, it became sort of an obvious, well, we're just going to call it the Iron Horseman Railroad, and the series will be the Iron Horseman Chronicles, which sort of rolled off the tongue. Even now, we have the acronym of TIHC, which people love to accidentally or purposefully misspell as THIC. We are not the thick series as much as we want to be. So, I need to bite the bullet and just do all-terrain tracks. So, where am I going? Well, the route. The route, our sets, was initially devised... Okay, so I'll say it right now, at the top. Wybold is, one of, if not my best friend. Was one of the other major collaborators in the show. That's why we always try to do stuff together, and that's why I try to loop him in with a lot of the stuff that we do. Even if he even if he has sort of moved on to, well, a little bit more of grown-up tastes when it comes to his work in the railroading sphere, which is understandable. I'm certain that the Iron Horseman Chronicles is something that he would not mind if it was never brought up to him again. But he was one of the... Oh boy. Yeah, good question. How was the movie coming along? Well, you might get a script release someday. Where was I going with this? He and I butted heads on a lot of things. We had very different creative visions for the series. And one of them was the way the route was done and to be done. And I was adamant. Well, we all knew that we were going to be splitting it up as, as between us we would do our different sections, and I was adamant that we would then stitch them together and make a massive route, and he would be tasked with doing this whole narrow gauge portion because he had wanted to have a 3-foot gauge section in with his own characters, of which he voiced all of, at the beginning at least, and the, and he wanted to do a couple other portions as well. The narrow gauge division is part of, or no small part of the reason why the railroad as a whole is such a disaster for assets. I'll just throw that one out there and I'll come back to it in a minute. The various horsemen set out to build their various sections. I had specified heights for the different towns so that you started with a baseboard and you just brought it up to the appropriate height and then you worked from there. And that worked well enough. Didn't work perfectly, but worked well enough. And then we would fill in the gaps later. We would bring them all in to one giant route, which would become the Iron Horseman Railroad, and that would be that. Like I said, we would fill in the gaps later. So, first of all, everyone had different assets, so that's one place to start. What would the narrow gauge pass look like? Oh man, I wish I could tell you. I started that with no particular vision. I just knew that I needed to build a railroad through the mountains. Honestly, looking back, it probably would have looked like something out of the Tamros Vale and Anaconda Railway. It probably would have looked like the section of narrow gauge that heads out of, that heads through Susquehanna, north and south, or east and west of Sisqueca. So that's what it would have looked like. Probably not pretty, because I had not refined my techniques, and I wouldn't. Eventually, I refined some of them in building the old main on that very railroad. The techniques that I use today, some of them I had brought with me. But by and large, I was using pretty mediocre techniques that gave mediocre results. And I wasn't prioritizing making a realistic right-of-way and caring about how the balance of cut and fill and how the terrain looked around the tracks, really. No, probably not 5% grades. Because it is all there. The track is all there, I think, on the later versions of the route, although I don't know if those ever got publicly released. But I did eventually finish the track so you could run from one to the other if you really, really wanted to. But it would not have been pretty, no doubt. The rest of the narrow gauge division was almost exclusively Weibald's doing. It was almost 100% a route that he had previously made, which was a very pretty route that was sort of tacked on. Because by the time we even started producing heavily, the fact that not everyone was on the same page about how the series was going to be run was pretty evident, and I think he just got demoralized and didn't want to build on a schedule, which actually is probably something he said pretty much verbatim later. It is something he said pretty much verbatim later, that he didn't want to have to build on a schedule to get this thing done, and so we found the solution so that we had a narrow gauge division, which was a route that he had previously built, the Copper Mesa and Timber Peak. Now, the thing about the Copper Mesa and Timber Peak is, and the thing about Weibald is, unlike some other, or similar to some other folks, namely East Rail, that I can think of, he did have a penchant for getting assets from the most obscure locations and just coming up with them, just rolling up with them out of nowhere. You wouldn't expect it, and he would have, these 1800s things because he scoured the whole internet for them so that he could build a railroad like he really wanted. And no one else really did that. Everyone else had their sets of assets, and they were a varied set of assets, but they were not so unique and so, in some cases, difficult to come by. When we attached the Copper Mesa and Timber Peak to the rest of the Iron Horseman route, the route was already struggling. Not because of its size or its detail, although those were issues, but because it had thousands of assets that not one single person had all of. And the Copper Mesa and Timber Peak about doubled that number. So, oh no, the heart was absolutely there. I agree. A lot of people cared very much about the series, and a lot of people still do care a lot about the series, and I feel like I care maybe too much. But, we built this world. And I will say, I don't mean to just dunk on Weibald here. His episodes were some of the best of the series. They had a very consistent, high quality in terms of production value, and in terms of script writing, and in terms of just the grasp of storytelling that he has always had. In some respects, I absolutely have always looked up to him as a writer, and I wish he had. It's obnoxious to say. I wish he had cared more, but I wish a lot of more people had cared more. I wish we could have gone farther. I wish life didn't get in the way. I wish it didn't have to be deprioritized in the face of things that were frankly more important. And just caring more doesn't give you more free time. And I'm never going to hold that against anybody. I wish, maybe it was wrong for me to say it like that. Maybe I should say that I wish we had gotten more of his input, more of his writing, more of his producing. I wish I had trusted him with more of it from the beginning, and maybe if I had, he wouldn't have been demoralized so quickly. But I digress. The railroad was already in a difficult spot. Already, there were sections that people had put together that were not bad. I will not say that. All of the sections, pretty much, were good, even if on the occasion they weren't up to exactly what we needed or exactly what we asked for. They were still good pieces of route in their own regard. And everyone bringing their own things to the table, and Trainz being what it is anyway, when we started fitting this route together, we started having missing assets. Oh no. And so we'd ask around, people would send along their dependencies, and their dependencies are dependencies. But even in those days, I mean, we're talking 2015, that's 7 years ago. We did not have a grasp of what you could do with Trainz and the dependencies, and how to find them, and how to package them, and how to send them around. Stuff like that, or especially how to fix them, that we have today. I think if you dropped the Iron Horseman route in my lap today, if I wanted to, I could get in there and patch up that route, given time. I don't know what the timeline would be on that, but given time. And that lack of knowledge prevented us from ever fixing the route completely. And the fact that we were all busier than we had hoped, that, the route was in my hands and it was difficult to move back and forth because it was so big and had so many dependencies. So rarely anyone else would ever work on it besides myself once their piece was done. And I was doing my couple hours a week making routes and that sort of thing, but I was also writing, directing, voice acting, producing, editing all of the episodes, aside from the ones that Weibold did, with help from the rest of the Horsemen, but I was still doing the lion's share of the work. And that isn't a complaint, it's a statement of fact. So, I didn't have time to fix the route also. And it didn't really bother me because if there was an issue, like if there was a hole in a scene, because there was a missing asset or whatever, I would just fix it right then, I was not proactive with the route at all. So, we came to a final version of the Iron Horseman route, which never had most of its problems addressed, because they didn't need to be for the sake of filming. And I will go back to that conflict originally, whereas taken from different schools of thought, Weibold cared about the narrative. He cared about the characters, he cared about the plot and driving it forward and making a good production at the end of the day. And that is a piece where I was unwilling to compromise a lot of the time in order to make that narrative, in order to focus solely on the narrative. I cared very much about things like train position, about what would be accessible from where, about how a locomotive would get from point A to point B over the course of a scene or in between two scenes. And absolutely there was some realism that was set aside for the sake of the story and the sake of the plot and the sake of comedy. But for the most part, when it came to the stuff that we could feasibly find solutions for, I was 100% trying to nail down those solutions and trying to find answers for everything. I mean, I wanted something with no loopholes, with no plot holes, with no uh, like holes in the world that it's, oh well, how do you get from there to here? Well, it doesn't really matter now, does it? Uh, I cared about those things, and I was unwilling to compromise, and I won't stand by that as being the right thing to do, um, necessarily. I will, however, say that when you were making a world like this, you can make a system and stick by it and still tell a good story. Um, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to hand wave little things in order to make your story work. And I've had to do that on the Housatonic. I mean, I've had to do that with just about every production, everything that I've made, as much as I don't want to admit the places where I had to do that in the Iron Horseman Chronicles, it happened. And, you know, it was, I think we got a better product for it where we did, and at the same time, I think that trying to build a bulletproof world, and someday I would love to still write the Boltzmann theory of vehicular sentience that explains why the trains and cars and vehicles talk, and have sentience and personality, and explain why that is. That is something I would love to do, because I want to patch that gaping hole in the lore up. But I was unwilling to compromise on that front, and that is why we ended up having one stitched together massive route instead of a bunch of sets that could be used. Fake photo. Oh, fake model routing. Let me see that. Oh, that is a very red caboose. But I mean, it looks good in terms of quality. It is just very red. Not all Tamros Van Anaconda is, and I recognize those switch stands. Yeah, number 400. That is actually kind of cute. That is, and that's a Ben Neal model I can recognize. And so, I appreciate people keeping these things alive by, according to Alec Baldwin, it's pixie dust. No, you're thinking gold dust. But, yeah, magic dust makes the conductor happy. Anyway, where was I?
What is the cat doing?
So yeah, that's why the railroad's such a disaster. Because I insisted on making it one giant piece, and once I did, it was impossible to move around. It was impossible to share between people and keep like a running, updating version of it. So instead, we just had a copy that I had, and occasionally someone would work on it, and then throw me back another copy. But because it had thousands upon thousands of assets, it was never complete, never fully operational. Some people have tried long and hard to make a version of the Tamros of the Iron Horseman route that has no issues, no faulty assets, no missing assets, and I applaud those that have gone on that journey, and I wish them the best. And again, it was because of the fact that it was a collaborative effort. It was because of the fact that it was one massive thing that, once it was put together, could not be disassembled and could not be easily edited. It was because of the fact that everyone came with their own set of assets, and the lack of knowledge, the lack of know-how of transferring those assets around and sharing those assets led to an inability to ever fix the problems with the route, and an unwillingness on my part to do it because of a lack of time. So Yeah, that's why the route's such a disaster. That's why the Iron Horseman route is such a disaster. Now, there's a trick that I want to play with here. Which is that the terrain tool, after we go through these edges and smooth them up a little bit, just use an invisible road with no traffic to make the hill and not delete it. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, that would be a way to do things. That's certainly a choice. I'm doing the 4M standard bump for nostalgia purposes because it's what I always used, and I would want to clean it up afterward no matter what. So, yeah, I mean it's a little bit cursed, but it's not that bad. My Steam was 7 minutes behind. Wow. Well, I hope you didn't miss anything, but the idea that I just had was using that additive thing. Now we're gonna have to make a section to do it on, because this area actually came up pretty well for a terrain track bit. I don't want to make it too obvious what happened here. I don't want to make it too flat, but I don't want to make it too hilly. You know, we're going for a happy middle ground of all sorts of things. And yeah, there we go. It's not exactly rolling hills, but it's something. So here's the deal. And I want to try this, but I'm going to save first in case this breaks things. Which is, if we do the advanced mode here, and I just throw down, let's just do, yeah, displacement 01. Why not? And we'll turn it way down to like there. And I'll also spread it way out along like here. Right? Oh, whoops. Too close in. Can I make a barely varied piece of ground using this? No. Although I like where I'm going with this. Okay, so see, now I've broken it and I need to exit surveyor. Don't save. We're going to load back into the map. Who pinged me? No trip planning. Muni J Church Line. That's cool. Okay. Anyway, we're back in the menu now. What's faulty now? List dependencies recursive. I don't believe that anything's faulty. Is it the signal bridge? I mean, I'm just double checking the signal bridge really quick to make sure that isn't it, because if that is it, it's gonna drive me crazy. P is up here. I'm singing the alphabet in my head. There's P. PR signal bridge. No, it looks fine to me. What the heck is that? It's not even showing me that there's anything faulty. Anyway, edit session. Okay, cool. It's still flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make some new pieces of terrain just to experiment with this on. And we're also going to do them as 5-meter grid, because we need it. fact that it does it like this is like the thing I like the least. So we're going to grab this. We're going to spread it out like this. Right to the edge, right to the corner there. Ish. We're going to do that. We're going to turn it down to like the lowest level we can. Just shooting this one out of curiosity, would you ever do a show like TIHC? So, I would love to, but I don't have enough free time in a day. I love to do voice acting for other people that are trying to do the same thing. I love to help them along with the concepts. I'll even do script writing, stuff like that. The issue is, when you put me in a position like that, I have the innate urge to take over. Even back in TIHC days, like I said, we butted heads a lot. I ended up just winning out of sheer pig-headedness and I don't know. And so things came out the way I wanted, and perseverance, I guess. And it sort of started out as like, oh, maybe we should do this thing, and I'm the one that sat down and went, okay, are we doing this thing? Is this a thing that we're doing? And then it became the thing that we're doing. So I have an innate ability to end up taking over a thing. Okay, look how bumpy that is, even in the lowest setting. Whoops. This is my issue. This is why I can't use this. Because it is so ludicrously bumpy even on the lowest setting. I would love to use this just to get some minor variation, but it's not happening. What I would do to keep something like that, to keep something else from ever turning into THC, would probably be just to keep myself as minimal as a part as I can. And I'm not saying that because I think that I'm the reason THC fell. No. We stopped producing because nobody had any free time anymore. But I would not spearhead another project because I know I don't have the free time anymore. That is what it comes down to. And okay, we're getting somewhere with this. So yeah, I do writing stuff that is not related but is in a similar vein and that I can enjoy myself and take my time on, that sort of thing. Come to Coffee Shop if you want to hear some of the stuff that I've been working on. I've been working on basically what I've termed as an Americanized Titfield Thunderbolt, if you're familiar with that. What is this going to do? That is still way too damn bumpy. This is my issue. It's too damn bumpy. Even still, it's not that bad. I might just use this section for the hell of it. I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, I could just undo and get rid of it, right? But I could also smooth out the edges and call it a day. It provides an interesting set piece, I suppose. So anyway. Alright, undo that. So, yeah, what I would do is I would probably keep it much smaller scale. I would keep it to a handful of people that I know, that are particularly dedicated and have been since the very beginning, or at least I know won't get disillusioned and, want to move on, that sort of thing. Like the Johnson. Okay, so Coffee Shop is an event that we host about once a month where we all share our writing projects. It's hosted in Homework and Writing in the Iron Horseman Discord server. If someone in the chat does not know what those things mean, we have a Discord server. The link is in the description. Everyone is welcome. That sort of thing. So yeah. I work on other writing projects now, but so to answer your question more directly, would I? I would love to, but I don't ever think that I would. I would love to be a part of something like that, just to do voice acting work. I think if I got into the writing side of it, I would become too involved. Um, because I love lore and world building. But anyway, my point is the the Iron Horseman, I guess you could say, failed. We had a season and a half, which, it was a good number of episodes. I wouldn't call it a total failure, but that's mostly because I don't want to admit defeat. Um, and the fact that it's still bringing in new people to this day and age, I mean, how can you really call it a failure? But the reason why we stopped being able to produce is because people got busy, people moved on. It wasn't even really so much that there were, that we were butting heads, because I think at the end of the day, those those arguments, those debates, and those fights, they they contributed to what the series was, because it made sure that I didn't just run away with the thing. Um, I would want to bring on people that have as strong of ideas as I am. Honestly, in a miracle world, I would love to have Weibold back in a driver's seat. Um, and even though we don't see eye to eye on most things, that's kind of where that's ultimately that was a good thing. I think for the series as a whole. Again, it let me not just run roughshod over the whole thing, uh, and make it what I wanted to make it. So I would have a few people, a relatively limited cast, a relatively limited scope. Um, Probably would end up being something like just the 2 foot episodes, or just the 3 foot episodes. A very limited scope that sometimes touches on what's going on in the rest of the world, and what's going on in your connecting railways and stuff like that. But an intimate cast of characters, yeah. What would be really fun is doing a series on just the branch line guys, on just Ivan, Westy, Gabe, um, and later on, these are characters we didn't get to add, but Penny, 1223, and Jacques, who is CN 89. Yeah, CN. Uh, but Strasbourg 89, which you can get a trading card of Strasbourg 89 in the first batch, Steam Star Power, on sale now. There are, like I said, 3 or 4 days to pick up cards if you still want some. A pack is only $6 and it gets shipped directly to you. And you get 5 out of 16 possible famous steam locomotives. What do you got to lose other than $6? Anyway, those watching this after the French Canadians. Those watching this after the fact are not going to be able to get trading cards, but we will have more Kickstarters. We have at least 2 more batches coming. That's basically guaranteed. The next one's going to be Railroads Online based or themed. Although, I have to talk to Tyler about that, and he has to talk to the powers that be a little bit more. But anyway, I digress. There will be more of those coming if you don't get some now, or if you do get some now and you just want more. And any remainders from this batch will be available on the next Kickstarters as, like, additional rewards. Which, right now, it looks like there will be maybe 15 packs remaining. And also, you can just contact me at any time, and I will sell you one directly. Shipping is going to be a little bit more than originally anticipated, though. And next Kickstarter is going to rectify a lot of the stuff about this one. You'll be able to buy as many packs as you want. You'll be able to have them shipped many more places on the globe than just the U.S. and Canada. And we will sort out the rest of that when we get there. So anyway, I just want to smooth this out. Because it's a little bit bumpy, and that, I think, is the biggest issue with these terrain height maps, especially if you don't spread them over an absolutely gargantuan area, which I thought 4 tiles might be enough. It's not even close. It's not even close. And I think I might end up copy pasting this area in some respects. But the issue is, yeah, maybe I could, no, yeah, no, well, yeah, I don't know. I would have to compensate for the slope, and then there are ways where I could do that. There are ways. We have ways. But that's probably getting into being more trouble than it's worth. So, yeah, having a series with just a handful of characters, with just a handful of people behind the scenes, all of which are, you know, more or less equally dedicated, more or less put in equal amounts of work, or at least have their specialties. You know, someone who's a dedicated editor, someone who's a dedicated audio guy, someone who's a dedicated script writer, someone who's a dedicated, you know, cameraman who can actually go in and film the episodes. Machinimator, I suppose you would call them. And that's what we would do. I mean, it would be a more akin to a regular show with real life problems instead of existential threats. Which, again, in fairness, the Iron Horseman was a little bit of both. It was supposed to get more into the existential threat side of things for a couple of seasons, and then more to the personal side of things for a couple of seasons. I had a plan for a much more extensive... I had a plan for a lot. But yeah, that's what I would do. I mean, not resting it all on the shoulders of one person is a great place to start. And not... you know, and myself not trying to commandeer the whole thing is a great place to start, is another way to phrase that. And not going so big or go home. Victor Tanzig, dude, is a one-man show in his series, is really good. I've not actually heard of him. This is another weird admission that I usually make when we talk about the Iron Horseman Chronicles, which is that I very seldom ever watched the show. It wasn't something that I tended to do. It wasn't something that I really liked to do. I would edit them, I would throw them together, and then I would put them online and probably never look at them again. Like, the one episode that I can think of that I've watched more than once is Call Me Comrade, because that's a really funny episode. It's a good episode to introduce people to the series with, I'd say. But anyway, that's where we are for today. We have terrain up to here. Well, half of terrain up to here. We have a long, long way to go. But I don't think anyone expected this to be done quickly. So, I hope you guys tune in next week. Continue asking questions. Continue posting comments. Buy some trading cards if you want to. There's a 3-pack for sale right now, I'm pretty sure. Unless that changed. I'll refresh the page and we'll see. Somebody snapped up the last 3-pack. Nope. Still 594 of the 582 goal. We will be printing. They're already printed. They're already on the way. And we'll be back with another batch of trading cards sooner or later. Much more real. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. The other thing is that a lot of people don't know or don't recognize. The Iron Horseman takes place in a completely different continuity from our own. That is another question / problem / like explanation for another time. Either way, once again, hope you enjoyed. If you got questions on Trainz, route building, the Iron Horseman, or life, the universe, and everything, I'm always here. And I will see you all next week. See you at the Railroads Online Community Playdate tomorrow on the Discord also. So, this is the Admiral, signing off.